Welcome to American Scandal Report by Skoob. I'm your host, Oz Dalton, and today we're diving deep into one of the most consequential political operations in modern American history. What you're about to hear isn't a spy thriller or a work of fiction. It's the meticulously documented story of how a foreign adversary weaponized our own technology, our divisions, and our democratic processes against us. This is the untold story of Russia's 2016 election interference, a shadow campaign that changed everything. Let's start in 2014, 2 years before most Americans even knew who would be running for president. While we were going about our daily lives, scrolling through Facebook, tweeting, living in our digital democracy, something sinister was already in motion. Vladimir Putin had initiated an operation that would fundamentally challenge American democracy. By May 2014, an innocuous sounding organization called the Internet Research Agency, based in St. Petersburg, Russia, had begun what can only be described as psychological warfare against the American people. Picture this. In a nondescript building in Russia, teams of operatives were studying us, learning our fears, our divisions, our hopes. Their mission, according to later US government intercepts, was crystal clear. Spread distrust towards the candidates and the political system in general. But here's what's truly chilling. Donald Trump hadn't even announced his presidential campaign yet. This wasn't about any single candidate. This was about something much more fundamental: destabilizing American democracy itself. The theoretical foundation for this operation came from people like Alexander Dugin, a fascist theorist with Putin's ear, who had long argued that Moscow should destabilize the political processes within America and introduce geopolitical chaos within the American daily experience by encouraging all manner of separatism, ethnic diversity, social and racial conflict. Think about that for a moment. While we were debating policy and candidates, Russia was playing an entirely different game, a game designed to turn us against each other, to make us doubt our own system, to fracture the very foundation of our democracy. Also in 2014, the Russian government began what officials would later describe as extensive activity against America's electoral systems. By July 2015, Russian intelligence had already gained access to the networks of the Democratic National Committee. The operation was underway, the pieces were in motion, and most remarkably of all, it had nothing to do with Donald Trump. Everything changed in the summer of 2015 when Donald Trump descended that golden escalator and launched what most considered a long-shot presidential campaign. Suddenly, Putin's operation found its perfect catalyst. Here's where the story becomes almost surreal. As Russian actors were spreading propaganda across social media and penetrating Democratic Party networks, Trump was deepening his ties with Russia, both publicly and privately. By November 2015, he had secretly signed a letter of intent for a real estate project in Moscow. An odd dynamic was unfolding before the world's eyes. Trump and Putin appeared to genuinely like each other. In December 2015, Putin declared, "There is no doubt that Trump is a very colorful and talented man. He is an absolute leader of the presidential race." But then came the classic Putin twist. He made sure to add that Russia would never meddle in America's election, which was up to the US voters. It was, as one analyst put it, a Putinist lie, both mocking and misleading. These two parallel developments, Putin's ongoing operation and Trump's improbable rise, quickly fused into something unprecedented. Russia began promoting Trump's candidacy for two specific reasons: his friendly posture toward Moscow and his divisive rhetoric around race, religion, and gender. For Putin, whose aim was to divide the United States, Trump's divisiveness was an asset in itself. In February 2016, members of the Internet Research Agency received explicit instructions that would send chills down the spine of any democracy. Main idea: use any opportunity to criticize Hillary and the rest, except Sanders and Trump. We support them. Let that sink in. A foreign adversary was literally choosing sides in our election. To understand the scope of what happened, we need to grasp how dramatically our world had changed by 2016. In 2005, just 7% of US adults were on social media. By 2015, that number had skyrocketed to 65%. Nearly 9 in every 10 US adults were using the internet in some way. This digitization of American life gave Putin something his Soviet predecessors could only dream of: the means to influence a US election at scale, His hackers could penetrate voting booths and voters' minds from thousands of miles away, sitting at computers in Russia, operating precisely and powerfully. Amy Pope, President Obama's Deputy Homeland Security Advisor in 2016, later reflected on the challenge they faced. You're talking about a foreign adversary interfering in the United States electoral system. Nobody is going to tell you the full story. The scale was breathtaking. During the 2016 election, Russian fake news spread to at least 126 million people on Facebook and garnered at least 76 million likes, comments, and reactions. It reached at least 20 million people on Instagram, where it was even more effective, amassing at least 187 million engagements. Russia sent at least 10 million tweets from accounts that had more than 6 million followers. But here's the most disturbing statistic. The 20 most engaging false election stories on Facebook in the 3 months before the election were shared more and received more comments and reactions than the 20 most engaging true election stories. We were literally more interested in lies than truth. The Internet Research Agency created fake accounts on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Google, Tumblr, SoundCloud, and Meetup months, sometimes years in advance. They amassed followings, coordinated with other accounts, rooted themselves in real online communities, and gained the trust of their followers. Then they weaponized that trust. The content Russia pushed wasn't random. It was surgically designed to exploit our deepest divisions. They created fake news and memes about Black Lives Matter, the mistreatment of American veterans, the Second Amendment and gun control, the supposed rise of Sharia law in the United States. And then there were the outrageous conspiracy theories, like the accusation that Hillary Clinton was running a child sex ring out of the basement of a pizza shop in Washington, D.C. The infamous Pizzagate conspiracy that actually led to a gunman showing up at the restaurant. On Twitter, they established a sophisticated ecosystem, a smaller number of source accounts that posted fake content, and close to 4,000 sharing accounts that amplified the content through retweets and trending hashtags. The source accounts were manually controlled, while the sharing accounts were often cyborg accounts, partly automated and partly manual. These software bots never got tired, never needed bathroom breaks. The bot army was always on, propagating fake news and engaging the American electorate around the clock. While we slept, they were shaping our democracy. One expert who studied this operation told me that 42% of visits to fake news websites came through social media, compared to only 10% of visits to legitimate news websites. Social media had become a superhighway for disinformation. In March 2016, Clinton and Trump dominated pivotal state primaries, making a face-off between them seem inevitable. Russia promptly turbocharged its covert operation. Between March 10th and April 7th, the GRU, Russia's military intelligence agency, targeted the email accounts of more than 100 members of Clinton's campaign, including Clinton herself. They successfully stole the emails of John Podesta, her campaign chairman. In April, the GRU breached the networks of the DNC and the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. But stealing the information was only half the battle. The real genius was in how they released it. Enter Guccifer 2.0, a fake persona created by Russian military intelligence to mask their involvement. The name was designed to evoke an earlier hacker, suggesting this was just another lone wolf, not a state-sponsored operation. The Guccifer 2.0 lie was flimsy, but it hardly mattered. The hackers sent the Trump opposition research document to Gawker, which published a story that received 500,000 clicks. This robbed Democrats of the ability to control the timing of their own opposition research. Then came WikiLeaks, Julian Assange's organization that had never been particular about whether its leaks came from whistleblowers or hackers. WikiLeaks gave the stolen data a stamp of credibility, and major news outlets, the New York Times, the Washington Post, The Guardian, Politico, BuzzFeed, and The Intercept, began reporting on the revelations. The timing of the first major WikiLeaks dump was no coincidence. It came just days before the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia. 44,000 emails and more than 17,000 attachments, all designed to create maximum chaos at the worst possible moment. The most politically damaging emails revealed how DNC leadership had worked to ensure Hillary Clinton secured the nomination over Bernie Sanders. While this wasn't shocking to political insiders, the emails were so blunt and in some cases so insulting that they deepened divisions within the party just as Sanders delegates arrived in sweltering Philadelphia heat. DNC chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz was forced to resign just before the convention she was scheduled to oversee. The Russians had achieved their immediate goal, chaos. Clinton's campaign manager, Robbie Mook, publicly accused Russia of leaking the email specifically to help Donald Trump. It was a remarkable accusation. Even at the height of the Cold War, it was rare to see a presidential campaign openly suggest that its opponent might be doing the bidding of a key American adversary. This prompted the first preliminary CIA assessment, circulating within the White House and highly classified, which concluded with high confidence that the Russian government was behind the theft of emails and documents from the DNC. If there was any doubt about Russian involvement, it evaporated in September 2016 when the same group launched an attack on the World Anti-Doping Agency. Putin's government was furious at the agency's recommendation that all Russian athletes be banned from the Summer Olympics due to widespread doping programs. In retaliation, Fancy Bear, as security researchers had dubbed the Russian group, published stolen medical records of American athletes, including Venus and Serena Williams and gymnast Simone Biles. But this time, in a blatant mockery of critics, the leaks were published on a website called fancybears.net, covered with clip art and animated GIFs of bears. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. Fancy Bear had emerged as practitioners of what intelligence analysts call influence operations, specifically using compromat, the Russian tradition of obtaining compromising information about political opponents and using it to leverage public opinion with tactical leaks and smears. But the group's most effective tactic was also their crudest: simple spoofed login pages that tricked victims into giving up their passwords. Next to sophisticated operations like Ukraine's Christmas blackout, these techniques were practically primitive, but they worked. In July 2016, New York Times reporter David Sanger sat down with Donald Trump for what would become one of the most revealing interviews of the campaign. When Sanger asked about cyber attacks and whether Trump would use cyber weapons before military force, Trump's response was telling. Cyber is absolutely both the future and the present. Look, we're under cyber attack, forget about them. And we don't even know where it's coming from. When Sanger pointed out that some days we do and some days we don't know where attacks come from, Trump replied, that's because we're obsolete. Right now, it's Russia and China in particular, and other places too. Trump said he was a fan of the future, and cyber is the future. But more troubling was the impression he left. At a minimum, he seemed entirely comfortable with what was clearly Russian interference in the US election. It raised the unsettling question of whether, wittingly or unwittingly, he had become an agent of influence for Vladimir Putin. Then came one of the most extraordinary moments in American political history. At a news conference in Florida in July 2016, Trump made a request that would echo through history. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you will be able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing, referring to deleted emails from Hillary Clinton's private server. A presidential candidate was literally asking a foreign adversary to hack his opponent. By this point, David Cohen, the CIA's deputy director, had crystallized Russia's objectives perfectly. They wanted Donald Trump to win. They wanted Hillary to lose. But most of all, they just wanted to fuck with us. And they were succeeding beyond their wildest dreams. To understand how we got here, we need to go back further, much further. Trump's relationship with Russia didn't begin in 2016 or even 2015. It stretched back decades. In 1987, when Putin was still a low-level KGB agent in Germany trying to recruit assets, Trump made his first visit to Moscow. According to author Luke Harding, this visit was the result of a fishing expedition by the KGB, which was actively seeking recruits. Trump was invited by Soviet ambassador Yuri Dubinin at a time when the KGB was systematically targeting American businessmen. It would be the first of several visits during which Trump was wined and dined, often under 24-hour surveillance. Oleg Kalugin, who was a KGB general when Trump first visited Moscow, later observed, Americans wanted change, and in that sense, Trump represented it. They never thought that he may have been influenced or even did have some sort of connections with the Soviets or the Russians. And that is what happened. Regardless of what took place in 1987, it's a documented fact that in early 2016, Trump was pursuing a business deal with Moscow privately while praising Putin publicly. Trump's nomination added a third objective, along with new urgency, to Russia's ongoing covert electoral interference operation. On April 18, 2019, after nearly 2 years of investigation, Special Counsel Robert Mueller released his report. Any doubts about the effectiveness of the Russian interference campaign were laid to rest. The report detailed, across nearly 200 pages, the steps Russia took to spread disinformation, divide the nation, and undermine the 2016 election. It confirmed that at least one county in Florida had been hacked by Russians. It outlined WikiLeaks' role and confirmed that Julian Assange had received the emails from Russia, not from a DNC employee, as he had claimed. While Mueller couldn't find conclusive evidence of criminal conspiracy between Trump's campaign and Russia, he found numerous links between Trump campaign officials and the Russians. He examined 10 instances of possible obstruction of justice by Trump. Mueller's investigation resulted in indictments of 34 people, including Trump campaign members Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, George Papadopoulos, Rick Gates, and Roger Stone. In addition, Mueller indicted 13 Russian nationals, 3 Russian companies, and 12 members of the Russian Military Intelligence Agency, the GRU. Over 980 federal prosecutors, including Republicans and Democrats, signed a statement saying that Trump's conduct, as described in the Mueller Report, would, in the case of any other person not covered by the Office of Legal Counsel policy against indicting a sitting president, result in multiple felony charges for obstruction of justice. As this shadow campaign comes to an end, one truth remains unsettlingly clear. Russia's 2016 interference didn't succeed just because of hacking. It succeeded because it understood us. Our divisions, our emotions, and our instinct to share before we verify became the real weapons. The Internet Research Agency didn't just spread misinformation. It studied human behavior, knowing anger spreads faster than facts, and emotion travels quicker than truth. In the digital age, democracy wasn't only attacked from the outside, it was quietly weakened from within. What's most disturbing is how easily foreign interference blended with domestic politics, blurring the line between outside manipulation and internal warfare. The shadow campaign didn't just target an election, it exposed vulnerabilities we still haven't fixed. And here's the chilling part. This story isn't over. The next campaign may already be unfolding, unseen. To uncover the deeper layers, hidden players, and unanswered questions behind this operation, download the Skoob app now and get access to the full story. Because staying informed today isn't optional, it's resistance.